There's a trap across my knee tonight, built to hold a full-grown grizzly bear. The old hands who ran a trapline for a living called it the Great Bear Tamer, and there isn't a company left alive that still forges one that size. Every tool on this list disappeared for the same 3 reasons: a protected animal, an outlawed method, or a handcraft that died with the man who knew it. Somewhere near the middle of this list is a smell trappers harvested by hand and sold for more than the pelt, and men still pay for that same smell today. The very last tool on this list never caught one animal at a time. It swallowed whole herds. My name's Cole Hartwell. I've run better than 40 miles of trapline in this same high country and spent more than 50 years in the back country working it. 19 winters of that. Completely alone. I'm not guessing at what's on this list. I paid for it. Number 25. That's the trap I've got across my knee right now. And I already told you its nickname. Sewell Newhouse started forging these in the 1820s. One size at a time. And by the turn of the century, 2 out of every 3 traps sold in this country came out of his shop in Sherrill, New York. He built a whole graded family of them. A number 0 for a rat, a number 2 for a fox, a number 4 for wolf and beaver, and at the top of that line sat a number 6. Jaws spread 16 inches wide, 42 pounds of forged steel hull. Trappers called it the Great Bear Tamer, and by most accounts it would hold anything alive except an elephant. That number 4, sitting 1 grade down, ran 33 pounds to the dozen. Light enough that a trapper could carry 6 of them on his own back and still walk a full line before dark. A man setting a number 6 didn't do it alone if he could help it. It took real muscle just to bend those jaws open far enough to set the trigger, and more than one trapper lost a finger learning that lesson the hard way. You can't buy one today. Nobody builds a trap that size anymore because nobody sets one for a grizzly on purpose. And the animal that trap was built for is protected everywhere it still walks. Number 24. This one keeps the killing quieter. A trapper working beaver water would rig his trap to a pole driven into the mud, set shallow so a caught beaver would dive for deep water the second the jaws closed. The ring on the trap chain slid down that pole as the beaver dove, holding it under until it drowned clean. No torn pelt, no chewed-off foot. A pelt that came in clean and whole always brought a better price at the trading post than one chewed ragged around a foot. A set that killed quiet and killed clean was worth real money to the man running it. It also meant a trapper didn't have to fight a live, thrashing animal at the end of a chain every morning he checked his line, which mattered plenty when that same trapper was working alone, miles from anybody who could help him if things went wrong. Almost nobody runs a set like that today, because almost nobody works a beaver line for a living anymore. Number 23. A trap built from 3 carved sticks and a rock, and you've probably built a clumsy version of it yourself as a kid without knowing its name. The figure 4 deadfall balances a rock at least 3 times the weight of whatever you're after. One touch on the trigger stick brings the whole thing down. It's simple. It can kill. And it's illegal to set in most states today outside a real survival situation. Named right in the code in California and in Delaware. That's the pattern you're going to see over and over tonight. The tool didn't get worse. The law got written around it. The cuts on those 3 sticks have to sit at just the right angle, or the whole rig either won't hold at all or won't trip when it needs to. Get it wrong, and you've built a rock that just sits there. Get it right, and you've built something that can feed a man through a hungry stretch of winter. Number 22. The quieter cousin, the Paiute deadfall. 3 long sticks and 1 short catch stick tied off with a fiber cord straight to the rock. It sets faster than the figure 4 and trips on less weight, which made it the better trap in indigenous hands long before any trader ever showed up with steel. That extra stick changed the whole go-a-meal try of the trigger. And it's the reason experienced trappers on both sides of the fur trade eventually favored it whenever they had the extra minute to build it right. That cord is the whole secret of it. Without it, the trigger stick has nothing steady to bear against, and the trap either fires on a breeze or won't fire on a bull-headed rabbit sitting right underneath it. The more you know, the less you carry. Number 21. Nothing but a loop of cord staked low across a game trail, a dragged nose snare, and the pull of the animal's own body is what tightens it. Rabbit, fox, even a coyote dumb enough to walk the same trail twice, and it never once needed a man standing there to work. A trapper reading sign along a trail could tell within a glance where an animal habitually stepped. And that was the whole trick to placing a snare loop right. Set it too high or too low, and the animal just walks under or over it without ever touching the cord. Every trap so far worked on one animal at a time. But the next batch gets stranger. Built to punish a thief or catch a marten, 40 feet up a tree. Number 20. The upgrade on that same snare. Tie the cord to a bent sapling instead of a stake. And a twitch-up spring snare snaps the animal clean off the ground the second it's triggered. Nothing left down there to chew through and drag away. A trapper running a stretch of rabbit runs could set a dozen of these in an afternoon and never once worry about checking back too late. Picking the right sapling mattered as much as tying the knot right. Too thin and it wouldn't have the snap to lift the animal clear. Too thick and a man couldn't bend it far enough to set the trigger in the first place. Number 19. The whole deadfall idea sailed up for something bigger than a rabbit. A great log deadfall could be built heavy enough to kill an animal far past rabbit size. Built right, it didn't tear the fur, didn't leave a wounded animal to twist a foot off and drag away half dead. Setting the biggest versions took two men working together just to walk the killing log into place before the trigger could be set. And none of that meat went to waste either. A trap that size wasn't something a man built on a whim along his regular line. It was a project, hauling and notching timber heavy enough to do the job and choosing the spot with real care, because moving it twice wasn't something anybody wanted to do. Number 18. This one punished a different kind of animal, a two-legged one. The Animal Trap Company out of Abingdon, Illinois, built something called the Stop Thief Trap, right alongside a tree trap and a mouse trap they called Auto Sight. A.R. Harding wrote up its exact setting method in his own manual on steel traps. One of the company's own founders, a man named William Hooker, held better than 27 patents on trap designs by the time he was through. This wasn't for catching game at all. It was a bait-guarding set built to catch the man raiding somebody else's line. Trap theft was a real problem out here, and a serious one. A stolen trap wasn't just lost iron, it was lost income for an entire season, and men had settled worse disputes than that with a rifle. And that whole idea, a trap built to punish theft instead of feed a family, has flat out disappeared. Number 17. This one went the other direction. Up. A tree trap or a marten shelf set went up off the ground entirely, nailed into a tree or set on a shelf where a pine marten would climb for the bait, tying up in the branches instead of on the forest floor. A marten spends most of its life up in the branches anyway, running limb to limb through the canopy. A set built anywhere else would have caught next to nothing. Building the shelf itself took some carpentry sense, nailed at the right height, angled the right way, so the marten had no path to the bait except straight across the plate. One species, one rig, built and sold for that job alone. Number 16. A trap most people have never heard the name of at all. The Oneida community started its own jump trap line back in 1895, calling it the Star, sized from a number 0 clear up through a number 4. With a toothed version built up to a number 14 for the biggest animals on a line. By 1904, the line had grown a solid pan version too, built in those same big tooth sizes for animals no ordinary spring jaw could hold. The Animal Trap Company of America bought the whole works out in 1926, and within a few decades it had grown into the biggest trap maker anywhere on Earth. The name Oneida Jump has been fading out of use ever since. Outside of men who collect the things, there are men today who track down these old rigs at estate sales and swap meets purely to hang them on a wall, never once meaning to set one in the field again. That's the mechanical side of the trade. The next stretch turns from steel to something you can't see or touch at all. Number 15. The oldest trick on this entire list. Older than steel, older than rope. Dig a pit. Cover it over so it looks like solid ground. And a pitfall trap drops small game STR straight down into it. No iron, no cord. Nothing but a hole and a lide. And it fed men who had nothing else left to work with. A man with nothing left but a shovel and a length of brush could still put meat in a pot with a trap like that, which is exactly why it outlived every piece of steel on this list by thousands of years. The covering was the whole trick of it. Brush laid too thick and an animal could smell the disturbance and walk clean around it. Laid too thin and the whole thing sagged before anything ever stepped on it. Number 14. Built for the table instead of the fur market, a coop and pen trap, log or stick-walled, caught wild turkey and quail alive, and it's a different kind of trap from anything built to hold a beaver or a fox, because the only thing it was ever meant to do was feed a man that same week. A trapper working this kind of set wasn't thinking about a trading post at all. He was thinking about super. A pen built strong enough to hold a live bird meant meat that stayed fresh until the exact hour he wanted to eat it. A dead bird left hanging in camp could spoil or draw scavengers within a day. A live one in a pen was meat on demand, whenever he got around to needing it. Number 13. Swaps out the killing weight for a box. Take a figure 4, or a similar trigger, set a heavy live catch box where the rock would fall, and you've got the humane cousin of every deadfall on this list. Catching the animal whole instead of crushing it. It cost a trapper more time to build, more weight to haul. And that extra cost is the reason it never caught on the way the killing traps did, even among men who would rather have taken an animal alive. Out here, time and weight were the two things a man could least afford to spend, and a box trap asked for both. Here's the first pattern break, because number 12 is the strangest thing on this whole list, and it isn't a trap at all. It's a smell. Trappers called it the medicine, and it came straight out of a beaver's own body, a gland near the base of the tail, called the castor sac. A beaver marks its territory with that scent, so a trapper who smeared a little near his set was baiting the animal with its own signal. Harvesting it meant killing the evaver first, just to get at the gland, which is its own kind of irony for a scent only ever used to lure more behavers in. It worked well enough that Castoreum got traded as its own good, separate from the pelt, often selling for more than the fur itself. Dried beaver castor still sells today for somewhere around $55 to $70 a pound in the perfume trade. You'd think a man could still make a living harvesting it. It takes the castor sacks off 60 to 10 behavers just to render one dried pound, and that math never worked once the fur trade itself dried up. There's a smell to that gland once it's rendered that most men would call foul at first breath, and yet mixed into a scent set at just the right strength. It pulled beaver in from a distance that plain instinct couldn't explain. Number 11. The specialty jaw nobody talks about anymore. A number 14 beaver trap came with an offset toothed jaw built just for that one animal. A number 4.5 was built specifically for timber wolf and mountain lion. A man running that kind of line needed the extra bite, because an ordinary jaw could let an animal that size twist free and leave on 3 legs instead of 4. Both grades are largely outlawed today. Both disappeared the moment the animal they targeted went from varmint to protected species across most of the country. A trapper who lost an animal to a bad jaw didn't just lose that one catch. He lost the trust of that same ground, because a wolf that's twisted free of a trap Once learns fast, and it teaches every other wolf in earshot the same lesson. Every trap on this list needed a man to build it and set it, but the guns he carried alongside that trap line were built by somebody else entirely, for a job just as specific. Number 10. A ritual most modern hunters have never heard of. A trapper would boil his traps in dye, logwood crystals most often, sometimes just bark or walnut hulls or sumac seed, a half hour or better in that bath until the steel turned dark brown to black. Then came the wax, paraffin or beeswax, and it wasn't there for the mechanism. It was there for the smell. A waxed trap held less of the stink of iron and human hands, and trappers dating this ritual clear back to the Middle Ages knew a beaver or a fox could smell a careless man from yards off. A trap left bare and rusty smelled of the forge it came from for a long time after it left the shop, and that smell alone was enough to keep a smart old fox clear of the whole set. Number 9. The plain gear that made all of it possible to haul. A pack basket and trap sack carried a working line of heavy iron on a man's own back, on foot or on snowshoes. Day after day, through country with no road cut into it yet. Osborne Russell wrote up his own outfit from the 1830s. Right alongside his rifle, his knife and his bait box sat a sack holding 6 beaver traps, standard kit, for a man working the mountains for a living. 6 traps at 8 or 9 pounds apiece is close to 50 pounds of dead iron on a man's back before he's added his rifle, his food, or anything else he needed to survive the night. Here's the second pattern break, because number 8 is the one thing every mountain man wanted more than anything else he owned. Number 8, the Hawken rifle. It came out of a gun shop. 2 brothers, Jacob and Samuel Hawken, opened in St. Louis in the early 1820s, and they built it for a man who had to carry a rifle every single day and still drop a buffalo or turn back a charging grizzly with it. Most ran 53 to 56 caliber out of a thick octagonal barrel around 32 inches long. The whole rifle weighed 10 pounds or better. The earliest one on record was built in 1823 for a man named William Henry Ashley, firing a full-ounce ball out of a 42-inch barrel. Kit Carson carried one, so did Jim Bridger, so did James Kleiman. Out on that same hard ground, nobody builds that exact gun anymore, because nobody needs to carry 10 pounds of steel to stop a charging grizzly at that range, not with what's on a gun rack today. A documented Hawken from that same era went up for auction not long ago, and the estimate alone ran between $50,000 and $80,000. For a rifle, nobody fires anymore outside a display case. That's a rifle a man once trusted with his own life every day of his working season, now sitting behind glass where nobody will ever ask it to do that job again. Number 7. The gun that armed everybody else. The Northwest trade gun, a light smoothbore the fur companies called a fusil, shows up in Hudson's Bay Company records as far back as 1761. By 1804, Lewis and Clark wrote that tribes along the upper Missouri were almost universally armed with them. Depending on which trading post sold it, the same gun went by the London gun or the Mackinaw gun just as often as the fusil. Around 58 to 60 caliber. Could throw a single ball or a full load of shot, reload fast, even from horseback, and it traded for 20 to 22 beaver skins, or about $7.50 in hard cash. Light and cheap next to a Hawken, it wasn't built for a grizzly at close range. It was built to arm as many men as a trading post could move, as fast as they could move them. Number 6. This one isn't a gun at all. It's the whole stem that fired one, flint, frizzen, and a priming pan, 3 simple parts working together. And the percussion cap put the entire flintlock out of business before the metallic cartridge shut the door on it for good. A flintlock could fail on a damp morning when the powder in the pan wouldn't catch, and a man who'd trusted his life to that spark learned to carry it dry no matter what the weather threw at him. Every gun on this list still needed a fallback for the nights the powder ran out. And that fallback came from hunters who'd worked this same ground for generations before a single trade rifle ever arrived. Number 5. From the people who'd been hunting this ground long before any trapper ever showed up. A sinew-backed bow took buffalo or elk sinew, dried and pounded into fine threads, then glued in layers onto the back of a shorter bow. That layering gave it a draw weight of 50 to 70 pounds without breaking under the strain. The glue itself came from scraped hide, boiled down and worked in while it was still warm. A bow built that way could outlast the man who strung it. Even after firearms were common, the bow stayed the better weapon for running buffalo from horseback, because a rider could loose a second arrow before anybody reloaded a muzzle full of powder and ball. Building one of these bows wasn't a weekend project. It could take a full season of drying, gluing and curing before that bow was ready to trust with a real hunt. Number 4 rode the same horse. Riders carried the buffalo lance, a mounted spear, into what old accounts called the straightway chase, picking one bison out of the running herd, riding alongside it, killing it at close range with a single thrust. A man riding that close to a running bison had one chance to place the thrust right, because there wasn't a second run at a bison that size once it knew you were there. That kind of mounted hunting died the same day the great herds did. Number 3, a craft built entirely by ear. Hand-carved game calls, cut from reed, wood and bark, could throw an elk's bugle or a wounded rabbit's cry well enough to pull a predator into range. A man who'd spent years learning what a real animal actually sounds like, shaped and voiced, every one of them by ear. Most hunters today just reach for an electronic box instead. A good call maker could tune the pitch of a reed the same patient way a fiddle maker tunes a string, testing it against his own memory of the real sound until it was close enough to fool an animal's own ear. Here's one last pattern break, and this one will cost a modern man his hunting license. Number 2, a pan of burning pine knots, carried through the dark to throw firelights into an animal's eyes and freeze it in place long enough for a clean shot. It worked, plain and simple, and it's the direct ancestor of what's now called spotlighting or jacklighting, one of the most serious wildlife crimes on the books today. Colorado bans hunting with artificial light on public land outright. Saskatchewan bans it without exception. Michigan goes further still, bans it outright for deer through the entire month of November. What a mountain man carried as ordinary kit will get a modern hunter arrested. Number 1. This one was never small enough to carry at all. A buffalo jump, or a buffalo pound, the largest trap ever built. And indigenous hunters were running them for close to 6,000 years before the first mountain man ever set a single beaver trap. Hunters marked drive lanes with rock cairns stretching for miles, using the shape of the land itself, coulees, hills and dips in the ground, to funnel an entire running herd toward a cliff edge or into a log corral built to hold them. At the Vore buffalo jump alone, on the Wyoming and South Dakota line, the bone count says better than 4,000 bison died there, across 250 years of use. The fall alone rarely killed a bison outright. It just broke the legs, and hunters finished the job and butchered the meat right there at the base of the cliff, the women of the camp working the hide and the bone on site. It didn't fade out. It didn't wear down. It vanished the exact moment the horse, then the rifle, then the herds themselves were all gone from that same stretch of ground. One right after the other. None of this rusted away from neglect. Every tool on this list got legislated and hunted out of existence, right alongside the animal it was built to catch. Next time, I'll take you through how a man running a line this long actually read the ground, which set to use, where to place it, and how to tell a fresh track from a cold one. The judgment behind all 25 of these tools, in plain field terms, If this is the kind of history you want more of, subscribe. Tell me down in the comments which one of these 25 you never heard of before tonight, because somebody watching right now learned to set a few of these from a grandfather who's already gone, and that knowledge is worth more than the trap ever was.